We also have this bit of news just in from the White House. Venezuelan opposition leader and Nobel Peace Prize recipient María Corina Machado will visit the White House this Thursday, face-to-face with President Donald Trump. Now, this comes amid U.S. pressure campaigns going on in that region, including, and this made huge headlines, the U.S. capture of the former Venezuelan president and President Trump's quest to shape the future of the oil industry in Venezuela. Live now to Paasha Mahdavi, Director of Energy Governance at Studies at UC Santa Barbara. Good to talk to you. So President Trump hasn't signaled that he thinks Machado should lead in Venezuela. So what are you looking for to be accomplished in this meeting?
Well, thanks for having me on. I think the president may be talking to her about her vision for the country. In particular, he may be interested in her plans for the oil industry. What kinds of assurances she can give to foster greater investment by American oil companies in Venezuela.
Well, and we know that at least one major oil company said they didn't feel like they could see a viability and a path forward investing billions of dollars, not knowing what the future of Venezuela was from a political standpoint. So is this just another chess piece to bring her in to talk about maybe currying favor with the oil companies?
It may indeed be, and as you pointed out, I mean, there are companies that are interested in investing, but revitalizing the industry in Venezuela is going to be a challenge. The infrastructure is in disrepair, given decades of neglect by the Venezuelan government. It could cost, roughly $110 billion over the next decade just to get back to what production levels used to be in the early 2000s. So companies will need to know there's stability before they make these kinds of commitments. And indeed, that may be what this conversation is about.
This is also the intersection of economics and maybe politics, wouldn't you agree? Because we know that Venezuelan oil has a great bit of powering what goes on in Cuba. And now Cuba is in trouble and on the ropes because of those oil supplies being cut off from Venezuela.
There's absolutely a geopolitical angle here. And it's not just because of Cuba, which indeed Venezuela has been a primary supplier to, both in terms of oil and also kind of politically. It's also to cut off access by Chinese companies that have been investing in Venezuela's oil industry ever since U.S. companies, with the exception of Chevron, have left the country. And so this may be an opportunity or a play by the Trump administration to try to get American companies back in and take over what Chinese companies had been doing with the state-owned oil company PDVSA there in Venezuela. But it's interesting because, these are two different directions that both China and the U.S. are taking. China right now is really ramping up sales and exports of clean energy, whereas the United States here does seem to be targeting a revitalization of oil and gas. But, it's the U.S. that should be leading the charge on all technologies, both of today and tomorrow, not running kind of a playbook that's propping up some of the fuels of the past and ceding further ground to China when it comes to exports of green energy.
Well, and really what it comes down to here on U.S. soil is what it means for the U.S. consumer. We had an oil expert on last week that said what happens in Venezuela won't affect our oil prices here in the United States. From your perspective and from your studies, will there be an impact to the American consumer?
No, there likely will not be. And I would agree with who you had on the week before. It's going to take, as I said before, probably a decade to ramp up production back to what it used to be in Venezuela, which is about 3 million barrels per day. That's only about 3% of global production, so it's still pretty small. Right now, they're only at 1%. There will be a short-term help with the 50 million barrels that President Trump had said will be hitting global markets, but it will take a long time before there is any impact on oil markets, and that means it'll take a very long time to see any impacts on dampening oil prices that will ultimately be felt by American consumers.
We know that these studies are your bread and butter. Best to you and the students you work with. Thank you so much for joining us on CBS News 24/7.